Hey, welcome to the Road and Morale podcast. So do you ever feel like screaming out in the office, on Zoom or outside the school gates? For the love of God, come on, really? And if this is you and you're looking for an honest, fun and frank podcast on life and business, then sit back and listen to me, Rona Morale. I'll be bringing great people on the show to talk, share and debate their life experiences and business challenges, keeping the show unpolished, but in a fun and unique British style, with sarcasm, tenacity, or maybe a few swear words or tears. This podcast keeps it real, honest, raw, and removes the bullshit in the only way I know how, through authenticity and getting shit done. Think of it less like the Housewives of New York or Towie with the lipo and drama, and more like the house lives of the real world. I hope you'll take something away to be better informed, laugh, smile, or maybe even finally getting the confidence to shout, come on really. So enjoy. Hi Stephen, thank you so much for joining me on the Rona Morale podcast. How are you today?
I'm very well indeed, enjoying a bit of beautiful sunshine here in Jersey.
Oh, what a wonderful part of the world, yes, because you live in Jersey, don't you?
Yeah, been here nearly 30 years now. Nothing to do with tax. Family have been here for many generations. In fact, it was exactly the opposite. I was originally a tax lawyer and came to an island where there are no tax rules. So it's kind of almost pointless being a tax lawyer in Jersey. Embarked on a totally different career, which led to me where I am today.
Well, listen, I've never actually been, but I have heard many wonderful things. So I inevitably will get there one day. But listen, for the listeners, I'd love to introduce you. I probably won't do you justice, but way back when, after you studied at King's College, I know that you set up a worldwide kind of financial education business that was hugely successful, and you sold many years ago, back in 1999. God, I remember that New Year's Eve. And then in 2003, you set up a non-for-profit think tank. And the focus really was about bringing really wealthy people together and purpose, which, although that isn't the topic for today, it obviously is a massive area of interest for many people in terms of purpose in life in general. So you called that G9. And then in 2018, when you heard the UN declare we've kind of got about 12 years left to get our act together from a climate point of view, you launched Ark2030. And that was to the kind of the unification to bring the world together, this mission to help planet Earth. And your target, or our target, I am a founding member, is to restore 500 million hectares of, could be oceans, savannas, forests, landscapes, and to do that by 2030. So this would, correct me if I'm wrong, but this would take us back to the pre-industrial age before we started destroying everything. And that's really what I'd love to talk to you about today. I came on board as a founding member because I just thought the goal was so bloody audacious. I just thought, this is it. This is the one that screams to me, that says, lots of people, one target, 500 million, break it down, let's just do it. And I know when we spoke previously, what really stuck out for me was when you went, it's a bit like being a mum, you put ironing on the stairs and you hope that it's going to go up and whatever, although I live in a bungalow, so I don't have those, but you just thought, you know what, I'm just going to get on do it myself. So please, Stephen, over to you. I'd love to hear more about how you started this and how on earth you've done what you've done in the last few years to get us where we are now today and the plans for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually remember the moment well when I saw this sort of 12-year Armageddon scenario where people were talking about we have until 2050. But the problem with that is twofold, really. The first is if you allow people to think to 2050, they will essentially leave it to 2049 till they do something. And the message that came out on that day, that fateful day, was that by 2030, something like 2/3 of the damage is irreversible. So no matter what we do after 2030, we're off the cliff edge.
Right.
And I literally just remember sat there thinking, wow, I spent 20 years with families around the world yeah, we're aware of the stories and how bad things. I've been to events where people tell you how bad everything is, and everybody's telling you how bad everything is. Nobody's actually telling you what we need to do about it. And my sense was that actually everybody's waiting for somebody else to do something. And I thought in some respects it was quite ironic that Greta said, you know, we need to act like our house is on fire. And I thought, well, I'm not sure that's the case, because when your house is on fire, what do? You pick up the phone and ask somebody else to deal with the problem, the fire service.
And leg it.
And although it's a pretty brutal analogy, I thought we don't need to act like our house is on fire. You need to act like your child is on fire. Because if your child is on fire, you don't phone the fire service. It's like, little Tommy's burning. You just jump on him and deal with it, roll over. And I thought, so we're getting the message wrong. It's always about asking somebody else. Ask the politicians, ask the government, ask the UN, ask. Most of these organizations are just drum beaters.
Yeah.
We need to do this. We need to do this. Okay, well, are you doing it? No. We just tell everybody we need to do it. We're not actually doing anything. Is it your money? No, it's not our money. And we haven't got any money anyway. Even though we're a multi-billion-dollar organization, we don't spend. Oh, okay, right. So nobody's doing anything. And the people that are doing stuff, and I've spent 20 years meeting them, are incredibly engaging, passionate, knowledgeable people who've sort of like grabbed me on these events because they kind of know I'm connected with these big families and sort of, can you just give us some money for this program, please? And I listen to them and like my heart bleeds, because I'm sitting there thinking, what you're doing is fantastic, but whether or not we actually replant some churchyards in Wiltshire ain't going to resolve the climate crisis. No. Neither is planting 1 million trees. Neither is planting 1 billion trees. What do we need to do? And I just thought, nobody really knows what we need to do. Nobody's actually ever turned around and said, what do we have to do to resolve this?
Yeah.
And more importantly, nobody's ever then turned around and said, okay, let's map that out. Let's work out who's going to do it, how it's going to be done, and where the money's going to come from. And I just kind of thought, okay, well, if nobody else is going to do it, I'm going to do it. There is a slight preamble to that, which is, had I not been doing what I've been doing for 20 years, I would just be another one of those people wandering around the events going, hey, I've got this idea, give me some money. But the reality is, I thought, I am actually in quite a unique position to make this happen. Yeah. And maybe, without being too religious about it, maybe, God's guiding hand has been moving me in this direction for 20 years and connecting me with all these people for this purpose. It felt a little bit like an epiphany. And so I sat and I was doing what most people who I've spoken to in the last year and a half are very familiar with. On my usual dog walk, I walk about 10K a day with my huge beast of a dog.
Awesome.
And I take lots of phone calls on that. And I just thought, well, I'm going to take a week out to map this out in my head whilst I'm walking on the beaches here in Jersey. And I thought, a week where I just think of the solution.
Yeah.
And what it might look like. And basically, the first thing that sprung to mind, which again, people will hear me talk about because it is what I was thinking, was this kind of Bruce Willis moment, this idea that if this was an asteroid heading towards us in 12 years, everybody on Earth would think about nothing other than, it's on its way. We'd be looking up every night going, it's on its way. Where is it? Can I see it? Who's going to stop it? Every government would be looking at it going, who's got the rockets? Who can, and Elon Musk, bring your Tesla, and Virgin, bring your rocket, and build this thing, and then we'll get a nuclear. All of this stuff would be going on. Everybody focusing on obliterating the asteroid. Yeah. And yet, because climate crisis isn't an asteroid, it's not a single cataclysmic event in 12 years. It's a slow boiling pool where the frog sort of leaps out when it gets too hot. It's one of those sort of stories.
In a way, though, I kind of wish it was. I kind of wish that there was this asteroid that was coming, because then it's one of the things I've always thought about. What if everybody for the next just 12 months did nothing but focus on climate change?
Yeah. And that was what was needed. Absolutely. That was what I just thought, right. I was sort of jokingly say, when I talk the story, I should wear a dirty white vest underneath my shirt and just go, Bruce Willis, he's here. I'm going to go, I'm going to do this.
When I
So
launch this, I'll put a picture of Bruce Willis on instead, if you like.
absolutely. I'm hoping one day he'll stand next to me on stage and go, Stephen, we're here. We're going to do this. But I just felt that's what we needed. We needed the world to unite behind a single clear mission. And Armageddon's the movie shows what can happen when that works, because the world understands the mission. It understands everybody's thinking, what can I do to help? Some people can go, I can do nothing. Some people say, I'm a scientist, I'm a whatever. Everybody can contribute to the mission. I thought that's what we need. So that was quite good. I actually managed to hit that sort of thing really quite quickly, thinking, right, that's what we need. We need a single unified mission. So key things. What does that mission look like? What is our target? How do we get there? When we get there, what do we do? And who's effectively going to fund this? So those are really the key pillars of the mission. And so the sort of, what is the target? And again, without being too scientific about it, if you've read Drawdown, a very technical analysis of gigatons and teratons of CO2, which means nothing to most people. So I thought first, if we're to engage the world in this, you've got to talk in terms of language that they understand. So the language I thought everybody understands is this world was actually quite a nice place until about 1800, in that most people, if you chop down a tree, it's because you need a bit of wood. Or if you killed a cow, it's because you needed to eat tomorrow. But actually, pre-industrial revolution, there was none of this raping and pillaging of the world's natural resources. You could argue that, of course, we had thousands of people killing grizzly bears in Canada in the 1700s and so on, but at an industrial scale, we started destroying the planet in about 1800. And the reality is that the vast majority of the destruction has taken place since about the 1960s, 70s.
And I think what really brings that to light as well is that there are still thousands of people living across the world who still live like that. They only consume what they need normally in forests and tribes and savannas, etc. But that world still exists, but we don't look at that as a way of life anymore.
We don't. And in fact, one of the most moving things I did last year at the UN Climate Summit was I actually went to a presentation of indigenous tribes in New York. And it was a UN gathering. It was really heartfelt. I remember the lady who did the initial presentation came out and said, our opening line was the earth is my mother, the trees are my father, the river is my blood. And it really struck me, the powerful imagery of these people came on stage and talked about how the climate crisis was affecting their life, in the Amazon, in the depths of African rainforests, all over the world, in these indigenous tribes. It was really affecting them, and yet they had no control over it, and yet they'd all decided for their own project to do something that was going to help them. It was really powerful, very moving evening. And then I walked out into Midtown Central Manhattan, and I just thought, wow, I've just gone from seeing people who are inextricably linked with nature. The mother is my earth, the earth is my mother, the tree is my father, the river is my... Literally, they are so connected with nature. And I've just walked out into Midtown Manhattan on a balmy September evening. Noise levels, people, concrete, and I just thought, we as a society are so disconnected from nature. And I couldn't have been a more contrasting image.
Yeah, and I think, and what makes me really angry, upset, frustrated is that those people are the ones that suffer even more than what we do. Yes, you could argue the increased fires in California and things like that, but we're getting hotter summers. People joke and go, oh, that's amazing in England. We love getting hotter summers, but we're not adversely affected yet. But those really are, to the point of, whole societies and tribes disappearing.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, so I looked at that and just thought, so what have we destroyed? And there's probably plenty of debate about this, but I don't really care. It's like sort of what's this is about communication. About 320 million hectares of what we have destroyed. To most people, that's an incomprehensible number, but we also continue to destroy about 20 million hectares a year. And I
what could to make that real, what what would that look like to say someone like me, 20 million hectares is the size of what?
Okay, well, if you talk about, add those two things together, you get to 500 million hectares by 2030.
Yeah.
To restore that 500 million hectares, you're looking, have you ever been into an IKEA store?
Yes, unfortunately. Never again.
Okay. So you've been into an IKEA, they're big, okay? Now, in the world, there's about 500 IKEA stores. Imagine 2,000 IKEA stores.
Mm.
That's the landscape we need to restore every hour of every day, 24/7, for the next 10 years to deliver 500 million hectares. So if that gives you some context of the scale of the task, that's pretty much, most people can get that. IKEA is pretty big. Imagine 2,000 IKEAs. There's only 500 in the world. Imagine 2,000. Imagine 2,000 of them every hour.
Every day for 10 years.
Every day, every night, 24/7 for 10 years. That's the task, which sounds astronomical, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, it's a big number. However, as I'm wandering along thinking 500 million hectares, wow, it's quite a big number. I did all the maths. It's quite scary. If this was football pitches going into degraded landscape, and you watched in front of you greenery turning into dirt and desert, you'd have to go in a Lamborghini at 220 miles an hour to keep up with the pace at which we're destroying land at the moment.
Yeah.
Wow.
God.
Okay, so some quite cool numbers. I'm thinking, right, 5 million hectares. Not like, oh, forget it, that's too big. It was like, how do we do it?
I'm done, I'm out.
Okay, I thought, right, there's 5 great ecosystems. You mentioned them: rainforest, forest, savanna grassland, deserts, and oceans. That's 100 million hectares each.
Yeah.
Okay, so 100 million hectares across the decade. That's 10 million hectares per year for each of the ecosystems. Okay, sounding a bit more manageable. And we've got 5 main continents we can be doing this in. So that's 2 million hectares for each continent. Okay,
Yeah.
it's a 1 million hectare project here, a 1 million hectare project there for each of these ecosystems every year for a decade. Okay, it's a 500-piece jigsaw puzzle of the planet Earth.
Yeah.
And each jigsaw puzzle piece is a 1 million hectare project, but all I've got to do is just build a 500-piece jigsaw puzzle and I'm there. So now all I need to do is say, right, 500-piece jigsaw puzzle of the planet, here's 1 million hectares. Okay, where is it? Who's going to do it? What are we going to do?
And let's
all
hope,
of a sudden, it sounded like, okay, that's okay. I can do that.
And let's hope the reverse happens. Whereas normally you have a jigsaw puzzle where there's always a piece or two missing, let's hope that those 20 million hectares that we still keep hacking away each year, we actually don't continue that for the next 10 years. And
Absolutely.
then you have the pieces of the puzzle done, and that would be phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think, yeah, what that said to me is there's a target here that's achievable. I now know I need to do 500 million hectares. It's 500 projects, 1 million hectares each. I need to do 50 projects a year, 10 projects in each continent across 5 ecosystems. Okay, that's doable. Second, how are we going to do it? And I looked around at how everything's been done, and it's failed us for 50 years. So I like to look at things and say, why has it failed? What can we do different? And basically the whole NGO funding model has failed us so badly. I just thought, we can't even adapt it. You just got to tear it up and start again. Great people embedded in a system that's so dysfunctional. Why? Because you hand out a grant to 50 organizations that want the grant. So they fight and compete on a daily basis for the grants, which means that they keep all their knowledge and their information to themselves, even though they're good people, because that's the only way they get food. And so, okay, we need to tear that model up and say, let's get all 50 of you together working around the table to work out in each continent what needs to be done first. Not what you can do or not what the company is asking for, but what needs to be done.
How do you get those 2 million hectares in your continent?
So take me 1 million hectares in one, so give me mangroves in Africa. Okay, right, we need, over the decade, we need 20 million hectares of mangroves, 40 billion mangrove plants. Okay, let's create the project. We'll find it. And in most cases, it was a case of thinking, because nobody can think this big, it was a case of knocking on doors of the best and the biggest saying, right, you know, you've done this amazing project. And they go, yeah, it's 50,000 hectares or 100,000 hectares. You go, okay, I just want you to sit down for a second. Imagine the unimaginable. If I gave you like $1 billion, what could you do?
Yeah.
We could do it here, here, here. So the idea is not looking at a million projects. It's taking one project which we know works and saying, how do we replicate that again and again and again as fast as we possibly can?
Yeah.
So there's a program in Africa where you can take 100,000 hectares of degraded land that currently feeds maybe 1,000 families with grazing cattle and goats. And if you do it properly with an investment of about $100 million, you can turn that landscape into immensely productive, resilient agriculture that can actually support 250,000 people with a livelihood, work, income, generating funding for schools, healthcare, clean water, everybody's got access to food, and sufficient economic return that we can pay back the $100 million within 7 years and actually give the land and the whole ecosystem back in trust to that 250,000 people so that they can live sustainably, free of any external aid or anything else forever.
See, 7 years payback. I mean, I've only, done smallish projects in terms of capex, but a payback within 7 years is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah. So it becomes very investable. So it becomes very affordable. It's just a case of mobilizing the money. But can it be done? Yes. And when you've done that once at 100,000 hectares, okay, let's just take that across sub-Saharan Africa 500 times. Take 250 million people out of poverty or a risk of starvation, flooding, drought, whatever. All of the risk that's there, because you're effectively recreating not just biodiversity, not just tree planting. It's about the entire ecosystem of thinking. This is not about planting trees. This is not about giving schools. This is about, if you get the environment correct and take into consideration all the stakeholders, where stakeholders include animals and life and biospheres and creatures in the ground and insects and people, then it becomes sustainable.
And you believe then that if we were able to do that, if we have a better way to feed the people, and people are going to live longer, they're going to be healthier, our consumption isn't going to grow exponentially, we can do it within what we've got.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
And there's quite an interesting thing there. The projections for the global population are not inexorably up. They go up for about another 15 years and then they drop quite dramatically. So we're probably going to peak about 8.5 billion and then drop. Places like Italy and Japan, their population will be half of what it is now in 30 years. So, the population growth isn't a long-term issue because if you look in drawdown, female education is number 5 in terms of most impactful. Why? Because if you educate females, they basically typically don't go on to have large families. And so that's why it's such a high target figure within drawdown agenda. Right. That agenda of educating females is having such a profound impact on the planet's population that economics and education mean that the population is actually going to go up, but it will then drop relatively dramatically. Much bigger economic issues than actually trying to feed 8 million, 10 billion, 20 billion people, because that's just not going to happen. And then as we educate people into conscious consumption, everything else, of course, we have to deal with the way in which we abuse the planet. Yeah. But the Ark2030 mission is about restoring the ecosystem. So we take planet Earth back to what it looked like in 1800. That's broadly the mission. And so understanding that you have to go in and design ecosystems that work with multiple stakeholders, and then you have to pay people to do the job. It's not about handing out grants and donations or giving money to government or whatever. It's about us landing on the ground saying, what do we need to do, and engaging everybody, but also remembering that it's global knowledge and local knowledge. It's latest technology and historic indigenous knowledge, wisdom. It's a blend of everything that creates the best on the ground.
Yeah.
And so my mission was to basically say, right, we've got a year to map out the 500 million hectares, and then for every aspect of that, make sure that we're speaking to the very best people in the world, whether it's leading academic institutions, global NGOs, local people, governments, regional, everything. Whoever wants to engage in the contact, you come in and you help make sure that everything we do is with the very best knowledge available to mankind today.
Yeah.
And that's going to change in a week, a month, and everything else. So we've got to make sure systems and technologies are in place to make sure that we're constantly learning, constantly evolving. So at that point, we had the roadmap. I was probably into about day 4 of thinking on this at this point.
You've done a lot of thinking.
Really sort of like thinking, now we've got to work out where the money's going to come from.
Yeah.
We now know what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, but who's going to pay for this? And my immediate thought was, hey, I'm connected with like 4,500 of the world's richest families. And then I remembered, of course, that having worked with those families for many years, it's actually incredibly difficult to get money off a wealthy family.
They're rich for a reason.
Not because they don't want to give. That's not true. It's because the range of things that are presented to them, it's just very confusing. One minute you're trying to cure cancer, the next you're trying to stop children on the streets in Mumbai being forced into prostitution age 5. The next you're trying to look at poor pangolins which are being stripped of their scales, 10,000 of them a day, 250,000 sharks slaughtered every day for shark's fin soup. I mean, where do you start, let alone end?
And I think this comes back to this, why I wanted to get involved in this. As an everyday, I say a housewife of the Midlands, I was just, every time I turned on the TV or whatever charity was raising, I felt so helpless. And yes, I give a bit for UNICEF, and yes, I do a bit here and there and Prince's Trust, but that's why I liked this, because it felt like it didn't matter whether it was the sharks or the children, wherever in the world, this was just one thing we could do and break down, and everyone would benefit.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that simplicity of messaging, I think, is key for most people. And I think it's really just thinking, okay, right, we know what we're doing, we know how we're going to do it. Where's the money going to come from? And I looked at families and thought, no, scratch the surface with family donations, with corporate donations. Everybody's looking at the bottom line thinking, how much can we afford to give away that has no stakeholder return? You're looking at an economy at the moment, it's about $5, maybe $6 billion a year. It needs to be 40 billion a year minimum, probably 100 billion a year. So donations is not the answer. And I thought, right, throw that out of the window. I've got to think of something different. And light bulb moment really was thinking, the reason most of those families have become wealthy is because they own a global brand. And the most important thing for every brand on the planet today is to show its customers that it cares about the planet. And if it doesn't, they're toast. You're dead, unless you show your customers you care about the planet. So I, again, fate would have it, one of my best friends is a CEO of one of the world's biggest branding agencies. And I got on the phone to Dan, ended up spending a couple of days at his house in New York. And just understanding what brands are searching for, and this panacea, which in fact COVID has actually helped, because everybody's looking for a new meaning to what their brand stands for. And so what's the issue with brands? Well, the problem is they want to show that they care about the planet, because they know that 90% of consumers will switch brand and pay more to be with a brand that cares. Problem is, only 12% of consumers believe a brand when it says it's going to do something. When it pledges, they go, yeah, whatever, I don't believe you.
Yeah. If
you buy carbon credits, you probably bought the cheapest carbon credits you can get your hands on for. So I said, we have to bring value back to that commitment. And the way we do that is to connect the brand to the consumer with full transparency on the work that's being done on the ground. Yeah. And that was my light bulb moment, thinking, if we can shift the dialogue so that we don't ask the brand for money out of goodwill, we actually give it a marketing scheme which actually helps them make more profit, a technology that allows them to understand how consumers are rewarding and behaving towards companies that care, so they get the metrics, they get the data to back this up. If you bring in that brand value to the proposition, they're going to pay me to be part of the Ark program. And how do we engage that to happen? And I just thought, I have been involved in the past, right in the early days with Bitcoin and things like that, and thought sort of got involved in Bitcoin right at the very beginning, told my kids about it, and they say to me now, why didn't you tell me to buy some? If only. But the reality is that I thought, no, if you mention cryptos and bitcoins and things like this, people just freak out. But we're all familiar with loyalty cards. Everybody's got them. We all don't care about them. I thought there is the answer, because it connects the consumer with the brand. But at the moment, it's quite a passive experience. You go in, you buy, and you get some points. You book a flight, you get some points. You forget about them. There's nothing engaging about them at all. And when I spoke to some of the world's leading sort of loyalty program people, and I think you've been in the industry, haven't you, from what I understand? They sort of said, Stephen, it's about 85% of loyalty points are just meaningless. They don't mean anything. So, but if we can transition that to something people really care about, your points mean something. All I could think of was like Bruce Forsyth with his points mean prizes. Points mean prizes, but this is the biggest prize on earth.
You've got two Bruces now going on in your world.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Crikey. Got to think of a third one now. Do the trilogy.
Bruce Springsteen.
So yeah, I'll leave the Bruce Forsyth impression behind. But the concept of points means prizes. Points means the biggest prize in history, restoring the planet. I thought that's it. That's the answer, because companies will be prepared to pay a proportion of their existing marketing budget into the program. So you're not asking them for money out of the goodwill. You're saying, here's a fantastic scheme that's going to make things better for you. And I also thought at that point, we can't just have this like a little card that you pick up your points on. This is an opportunity to really engage people. And what do we need to engage people to do? At that point, my brain was just exploding, thinking, wow, okay, if at its basic end, we sort of say, I walk into a big retailer, I buy something, $50, I get 50 points. 50 points is 50 cents into this project over here, and I can click on the points and go and see the project and literally wander around it and visualize it and listen to the people on the ground saying, this is what we're doing today. By the way, this is where we spent the last $48,000 just doing this hectare here, and look at what it looked like. Wow, fully immersive engagement. I thought, right, if we do that, build that. Second, companies. We can now engage with the companies and say, what are you doing? Not just about giving us money, but your own sustainability agenda. Let's democratize the sustainability initiatives for companies around the world, democratize access to the knowledge. There's only about 10,000 sustainability advisors in the world today, 50 million companies.
Wow.
Okay, we've got to go online with the education and the information, so every company can kind of go, right, do this. Let's get 80% of the job done, which is generic sustainability advice, and then maybe use the consultants for the very specific detailed stuff depending on your business. I thought, right, so it allows us to engage with the companies, allows us to immerse ourselves in the programs, and then we have a loyalty program that every consumer can basically really engage with what we need them to engage with, understanding the impact of your behavior and your consumption, but in a positive way. It's not, I've made it clear from the outset, we will never sit down and say, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. What we will do is say, if you do this, this is brilliant. If you do this, this is fantastic. If you do this, these are the positive implications. And you lead by information and example, not by beating people up for saying, you just had a steak. Because at the end of the day, do you know what? I tried going vegan, lasted about 3 days, no chance. Love my bacon sandwich, love the occasional confit duck. I mean, it's literally like, that's it. And yeah.
I considered it a couple of weeks ago.
And I'm prepared to stand there and say, I'm human. Yeah, I did. I'll try and make sure it's an organic steak from a local cow that's actually had a decent life. But at the end of the day, my kids take photographs of me, like if I accidentally throw a plastic thing in the bin, and they like take a photograph going, oh yeah, Mr. Ark, look at you with your plastic recycling sort of not. And I'm sort of like, thank you. I just had a moment. I have my moments. I'm not perfect. So it's literally like recognizing that most of us aren't, totally committed eco warriors who change our life to do this. And most of us aren't redneck steak eating Texans who will never compromise on their 8-liter Chevy, their big red steaks and everything else. I'm not trying to convince them. We're just trying to guide the 98% of this planet who are actually good people who want to do better. And they, with the information, they will. And if we can move that bell curve across, even marginally with behavioral change, then we're into real impactful action.
Well, I think the thing about the points as well, like I think just relating it to me, I either earn the points and never use them, or I realise that I've got to get so many bloody points just to get a dirty kebab down the road. I'm like, what's the point?
What's the point?
This way, I can imagine if I could click on a live hub link or link into, Restore Africa or Australia, wherever it is, that would be awesome. And actually, if we can shift that bell, okay, if we get this 500 in 10 years' time, that legacy, that mindset, that, oh my God, we can do it, to your children, my children, and everyone else watching, that will be the shift change to hopefully change those staunch, I'm going to, have an 8-litre car and things, because we're not going to do that now, are we?
And the point is, you're paving the way forever. It's the behavioural change. It's the equivalent of saying, don't go on a diet and suddenly go from eating loads to eating a lettuce leaf. Just transition away from the garbage into healthier stuff. It's a lifestyle change. And that means that you don't get to 2030 and then suddenly go, stuff the lettuce, I'm going to go back to binging. It's changed your lifestyle and your decision-making processes. So actually, we don't only flatten the climate, the temperature rise, we go to zero. We actually start cooling the world down a little bit. Let's take us back to where we were in 1970 and then 1950. Now, if we get this really right, we could be actually having an ice age. If we talk about global freezing and what we need to do about it in 20, and they'll be going, that's Stephen Fern brought this ice age upon us with his bloody trees. Didn't say that. But the essence of actually, how far this can go is exactly right. It's about changing all of these different aspects. But it came down to, by the end of this sort of day 6, I've got this idea of, right, if I can connect all of this with one smartphone that allows people to understand what the companies are doing, allows the companies to tell their story, it allows us to go and see the work that's being done on the ground, it allows us to see how I can change my behaviors, it gives me data and gives everybody data about my behavioral things and how I can influence, manipulate. And then we use this points scheme, this loyalty scheme. 1% of the turnover in a loyalty program is about the norm. 150 the biggest companies in the world, 150, that's all, could actually fund the reversal of the climate crisis 3 times over.
Really?
In 6 years, not 10. Yeah.
Now
So I'm basically taking my 500-piece jigsaw puzzle and saying, starting point, I'm going to go out now and get the 500 biggest companies in the world, or most important companies in the world, give them each one jigsaw puzzle and say, your job, give me the loyalty program and you'll fund that one. And that's doing the job once. Of course, we'll then take the second tier of companies and say, hey, you can do this. And maybe it's a 5,000-piece jigsaw puzzle because you can't afford perhaps a loyalty program to deal with one. And we'll do it many times over. The reality is this is very doable in 10 years. I mean, it can be done even faster. The amount of money you're talking about is astronomical, but it's not going around with a begging bowl. It's not saying, oh, please. It's literally saying, I'm going to give you something that's of great value to your business, and we're going to end the climate crisis off the back of it. And that is really what this was about. So I thought we can connect that with an app. We've got this sorted.
Yeah.
So that was it. Day 7, took a bit of a rest, and
you nailed it.
And then it was like, okay, I went back to a few of the families I'd spoken to at the beginning of the week and said, I think I've mapped out the answer. This is the vision. This is what we need to do. This is how we need to do it. This is how we're going to pay for it. We're connected all with the Ark2030 app. It wasn't called Ark2030 back then, but it was just called the Ark2030 app. And we'll connect everything in together and then unite the world behind this global mission. And we can absolutely deliver it. And almost irritatingly, Boris Johnson stole he won an election by just going, get it done. And I'm just going, that's my phrase. Just get it done. Stop talking about it. Stop scaring us. Let's just get it done.
Feel with glee. Take it. Absolutely take it.
Going back, I'm sort of like, so that is really what this is about. It's actually saying there is no other plan on earth today that maps out the solution. It doesn't exist. When I spoke about it, the UN, literally jaws hit the table. I've been in meetings with grown people crying, sobbing, literally getting overwhelmed with the story because they're kind of going like, wow, we've been waiting to hear something meaningful, but this is so doable.
Yeah.
we can see it. Oh my goodness. And they get overwhelmed by it. And I've literally people taking 5 minutes out saying, just got to stop. Just let my brain try and absorb it. Because it's
Exactly.
too big. But the idea that you just sit there in your van talking about it, going like, yeah, we can do this. We can make it happen. So a year ago, I stood at the UN Climate Summit and basically set out, this moonshot mission saying we can do this. I said, I'll come back in a year and tell you what we've done and that we should be ready to go. And here we are, exactly 1 year later, talking to you. And we are about to announce our first major global brand commitment into the program this week.
Amazing. Can't wait.
From this week, we're hoping that there will be a relatively rapid succession of global brands saying, right, we're in too. And then my mission is as quickly as possible to get the 500 jigsaw puzzle pieces matched with the global brand. And kind of jokingly shows my age here, but the beginning of the internet, there was a kid who he was trying to go to college and he had a Mixel's photograph and he said, you can sponsor me for $1 and you can have a pixel of this picture. And he literally made $1 million in the space of about 3 days, right at the beginning of the internet. Nobody had ever seen it. If you Google it, it's called the Million Pixel College Kid.
Okay.
And literally brands around the world thought that's a clever idea. And he literally just got, Pepsi, they bought about 50. So you could see Pepsi as the logo. He made $1 million, went to college, great story. And we're kind of doing that. We're kind of going, look, 500-piece jigsaw puzzle. I want you there, you there, you there, you there, you there, you big 500 companies. We can do this. Everything else that we do speeds up the process. So it becomes not 10 years, but 9, but 8, but 7, but 6. And then we start going, now we start solving all the world's bigger problems because we're feeding everybody. We're giving them income. We're giving them, because of that income, access to clean water and health and education. And we can really start to deliver the broader SDG agenda that, again, everybody knows what we need to do, but there isn't the money to make it happen. This delivers that. So let's keep going. That's the mission.
And in a nutshell, that took you a week of thinking, but you know what? And this is what I love about that. Like you explaining that and actually being able to simplify it to a room full of hugely intelligent people and at the UN and in the audience that you have, I can imagine that jaw-dropping moment, because it is. I was umming and ahhing at first because I was a little bit like, how are you going to do that? There's no way you're going to do that. But the more and more I looked at it and the more I engaged, I just thought, yes, this is doable. And your complete fresh approach to it and attack is exactly what consumers, people who work in business and finance and investment, they get it. It's talking their language. And I think that's the critical thing. For people listening today, if you're a business, you're an investor, or you're just, an individual, a consumer, what would your shout out be to them? What can we do to help you get on this path?
The most important thing anybody can do is to become part of the community by downloading the Ark app, the Ark2030 app, because within that there are lots of different special interest groups that allow you to say, I could do that. I can be involved in that, whether it's understanding more about your conscious consumption, your well-being, your consumer behavior, whether it's keeping an eye on the points that you're going to start accumulating through swap programs and reward programs in every shop and every service that you see, about keeping an eye on the projects that are being done, helping spread the word about things.
And this is a free app, isn't it?
It's a free app to go into. Yeah. And really what it's about, it's just about that connection. Because by building that audience, if every brand brings us their audience and says, earn your Ark points when you buy this particular chocolate bar, and that audience comes into the app, you end up with a really, truly colossal global audience into the hundreds of millions. And I kind of look at it and think, you look at the cesspool that Facebook has become, where everybody's disengaged from it because it's so toxic. You can actually go into this and you can look and see inspiring ideas and thinking, and you can just think about how we live better lives as individuals, as family, as business, and looking after everybody and everything around us. And the app is the core, because within the app you will learn about all the initiatives you can take. As a business, you will learn about sustainability. and we will deliver sustainable education to every business free of charge from the best people in the world, because everybody gets this. The smartest brains in the world saying, I will tell this story for free, because instead of me charging, you know, X $1,000s an hour to go and speak to one company, if you're telling me, Stephen, I can communicate with 1 million businesses who will all go out and do something meaningful, you know, what better thing to turn around to your kids and go, you know, what did mommy or daddy do today? Yeah, really, really cool thing. You know, I've really made a change to how the world can live. But do you know what? It's also about understanding an individual role and contribution. And one of the programs we're launching very shortly is I got together with the designer of the world's smartest coffee cup. It's really cool. It's called Topple. And basically, it allows you to drink coffee. You get the aroma, you can drink it, but it's got a patented lid. Knock it over, and it's slammed shut.
Yeah.
So you've got the full experience of drinking coffee from an open cup. But if you tip it over, it doesn't destroy your laptop or your phone. It's fantastic.
Can you please send that me to my kids? I'll test that out with the kids first.
I'll send it over. It's fantastic. It is amazing. So we've done a deal with them, and we're basically going to all the companies in the world saying, buy one of these for every member of staff. Now, to put that into context, if you've got 1,000 staff, they typically, on average, according to one of the coffee chains we're talking to, will basically buy, on average, 10 coffees a week. So that's 10,000 coffees a week, which is 500,000 a year, which is 5 million in the decade of ecosystem restoration. So small company, 1,000 employees, 5 million paper cups not going into the bin, plastic lids not going into the bin. So that's cool. Equally, take this cup into your local coffee shop, and essentially they'll give you 25 points. Rather than give you a small cash discount for using the refill cup, they actually make money if they give you 25 pence, by the way, because it costs them more than that to give you a disposable cup with lid and deal with the litter and everything else with it. So they're happy to give you 25 pence. I'm saying, don't give them 25 pence, give them 25 points. 25 points is a tree. Every time you use this cup, I'm going to plant a tree for you. Okay, that one small company, 5 million cups not going into landfill, 5 million plastic lids not going into the ocean, 5 million trees planted, just for the price of that $12 cup, £12 cup. So little initiatives like that say you can make a difference.
Well, they're little, they're simple, and they're scalable.
It's because you can get 2.4 billion coffees a day are consumed around the world. We could plant 2.4 billion trees a day just by people using the coffee program. And every coffee shop loves it because it stops them having to give ceramic cups that they have to get in, wash, dry, put away, or paper cups and plastic lids that cost them an absolute fortune and create litter problems, recycling. And wow, okay, simple solution. So that's going to go live end of October. And we're taking pre-orders from global companies to say, buy your 100,000 staff, you're a big financial institution, 100,000 staff, we can plant 1 billion trees on your behalf in a decade. Yeah. Just by spending $12 on each member of staff once in that decade. They go like, sign me up. So well, that's really important. It's not just the big games, the big numbers that matter. Everybody, one tiny action, but repeated by 2 billion people around the planet. Wow, we can do this.
And you know, I have to say, as a founding member, obviously, I am on the app, and I do find it really agile, user-friendly. I've met some incredible people. In fact, I've got a couple of podcasts with some of the founding members, and it's been really easy to use and engage with. So guys, if you are listening, you want to check out this, go to Android or iPhone and just search Ark2030 and download the app. I just want to flip this a little bit now. So we've been through why you're doing this, your thought process, and where you are in the journey. I'd like to kind of flip it and go, so what if we achieve this? Have you got enough people to plant all of these trees? Have you got enough resources to be able to do this?
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's quite funny when you talk to some of the global, I'll call them for the sake of the global institutions, the supranational bodies, because I think the mindset is always one of, you won't be able to, you can't, and there's a million reasons why I'm going to tell you this will fail.
Yeah.
Okay. And I come from an environment, particularly with the global business families, that discussion just never enters the mind. If you turn around and say, crikey, let's go and attack China. I want 30,000 coffee shops in China next, by the end of 2022. Believe me, the Starbucks board don't sit there going, oh, we don't speak Chinese, and don't know. Does anybody know how you? No, you just get on with it. You just do it.
Yeah.
So my mindset for this is, nobody's pretending this isn't enormous. Nobody's pretending the task of like 2,000 IKEAs a day isn't just beyond comprehension. Planting 1 trillion trees, to put that into context, think about somebody's actually got to create 1 trillion seedlings, 1,000 billion seedlings, which is 100 billion saplings a year, which is 2 billion every week. Who's 2 billion saplings a week? Yeah, okay, it's big. Okay, that's where you turn around to the big global agri industries and go, right, okay, I need 500 million trees across 20 different varieties every week for the next 10 years. And I'm going to pay you X. Oh, yes.
Consistent income for 10 years. Let me think about it.
Exactly. No. You're creating a whole new economy that's worth 100 billion, 200 billion a year. Okay, believe me, there's plenty of companies out there in the world that will go, yep, I'll do that. Or if not, do you know what? We'll make one. We'll create it. We'll build it. There is nothing that we cannot do, provided we put our mind to it.
And this is, you know what, I wasn't I was deliberately being not argumentative there, but kind of, it is that what if. And I want to make sure that when people engage with the app and they start to learn more about what you're doing, that this has been clinically thought through, and that it is that we're just going to go and do it. It is that what can we achieve, or actually this is how we're going to do it. And there's always a reason to say no or not do it. But what we have here is that opportunity to just keep on saying the same message over and over and over again and delivering against this, no matter who you are. And I come from a world of, innovation, risk taking and all of that. So I get that, but I want other people to believe in the stats, believe in what you're saying. And as we start to go global with these big companies, they see it come to fruition. And so go on.
Again, I love sort of movie analogies. And have you seen Bridge of Spies?
No.
Great Spielberg movie. True story about an exchange of spies between America and Russia across the Berlin Wall. And there's a sort of, Tom Hanks is the American lawyer talking to the Russian spy, and he's always literally going from moment to moment where he's about the Americans wanting him to be executed and hung for treason and all this kind of stuff. And every time Tom Hanks sort of says something to him that literally would have most people going like, Tom Hanks looks at him and he says, "You don't look worried." And basically he turns around and he looks up at Tom Hanks and he says, "Would it make a difference?" And you know what? That is almost my mantra. People who know me, they just go like, he just looks at you and says, you can be as negative as you want to be. It doesn't actually change what we're going to do. And I realized that a long time ago in life.
I love that.
And it's like, no matter what else is going on, no matter what anybody's saying, you can't do that, you'll never do that, blah, blah, blah. Does that actually change what we're doing? No. So I don't listen to it.
It's a great life mantra as well, not just for what you're doing here with Ark. It is a great life mantra.
It absolutely is. And it's literally just like everything else is just noise. And I remember saying, I had a friend, quite close friend once, who went bankrupt through circumstances around 2008. And I remember seeing him in town, and he was looking pretty damn distraught. And I just said to him, I said, "Do you know what?" I said, "The people that know you, the people that matter, really don't care. We just want to know that you're okay." I said, "Are having a go will basically what does it matter? You'll never speak to them. You'll never know them. It wasn't anything that you did deliberately. The world economy has changed without you sort of without you being in control of it. It wasn't anything that you deliberately did. And it was just circumstances. I said, that doesn't make you a bad person. I said, but the only thing you need to remember is everybody who knows you knows you're not a bad person. So everybody else's opinion doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And I've realized a long, long time ago that was absolutely true. It doesn't matter what people are saying. All that matters is what you're doing. And if you're true to this mission, we will deliver. And even then, I have no doubt that you will have these sort of, whoa, this guy's done all this, and then there'll be, oh, let's knock him down and shoot him down and everything else. I'm just going, if I was the type of person that mattered to, it would literally be, sort of like, quite terrifying. But I kind of don't care.
And I love that, and that's what I love about it.
Yeah. And it's just like, we're just getting on with it. Just get on with it. That's all. I don't care if you think it's not going to happen, because that doesn't change the fact we're getting on with it. And that's what really is the point here. And if you want to jump on board because we're getting on with it, that is fantastic. Support it. Amazing. But if you want to stand on the shore throwing stones at the ship, really, it's not going to make any difference. It's not going to change our course, put it that way.
And you know what? Having, certainly in the last 10 minutes of this conversation, I can really see that. I'm going to say it, but that ethic kind of attitude, and you're just going to get on with it, and you're going to not let, and you will, undoubtedly, there are going to be people who won't believe and people who think it's unachievable and all of that. But you know what, for someone with the connections that you have, and for someone like me who is a founding member, I think we all have that, I believe, that ability to change that behavior and evolve that behavior. So listen, thank you so, so much for taking me on this journey of how this all came about. I'm super excited to be part of that journey anyway. And I hope more and more people will do from this session. And I'd love to get you back on again, maybe in 6 months' time, just to see how we're getting on, where we're at, and talk more about the next exciting brands that are coming on board. Is there anything you'd like to kind of say to the listeners before you go about your mission?
I think we would always say art belongs to the people, and everybody has a role to play. And you can kind of sit relatively passively and get involved and view the app and get it. But what we really need are people like yourselves to go out there and beat the drum and say, everybody, this is the solution. Share, tell your family about it, your friends about it, talk about it in business, because the more we can align people behind that mission, the greater the chance of its success. So being an ambassador for the art mission is critical. We need millions of ambassadors around the world talking to everybody, saying, get involved in this. With this, we can make it happen. It's not just a dream. If we get behind it, we can make it happen. The only reason this won't happen is if everybody sits on their backside and does nothing. Then we've only got ourselves to blame. When our kids are looking at us saying, what were you thinking?
Yeah.
What were you thinking, the way you treated our planet? We can actually look at them and go, do you know what? I stood up, and I stood up to be counted. I was there. I did my best. That's all.
Perfect. And I think that's just the perfect end to it. There really isn't anything more that I could add. So just a massive thank you again. Thank you for taking that week out all those years ago and making this a reality for many, many people. So as a founding member and as somebody that I hope the listeners will then, really get to grips with this and have a good listen. I can't wait for the next 10 years. So thank you, Stephen.
No problem at all. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
So that's it. You've made it. The show's over. Thank you for being with us. I hope you've been able to take something away, maybe solve a problem, or just know you're not alone. Here's hoping it made you smile with a few laughs along the way. Please feel free to find me on all social media channels, and you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just search the Rona Morel Podcast. Have an awesome day and see you next time.